Hey guys, hope you're all doing well as usual. I'm doing pretty good myself, just hanging out here in the van for a change. The weather outside is a little bit average, kind of overcast, and yeah, it's a bit chilly, so thought I'd hang out in here and make a video for you guys. Today I was going to make a video on the Fantastic Vent fan, which I actually have two of. You can see one here and there's actually one up there. Yeah, one of those things that I just think is a really important addition to a van if you're going to be building out a van for van life, or even the pre-built vans. I just really think if you're going to live in a van, you can't do without the ventilation. My first van I had when I first built it didn't have any ventilation, and yeah, it was tough, man, especially in summer when it was really hot in the mornings. I'd have to get out of bed and just every morning I'd wake up feeling like I was suffocating. It was so hot in the van, but then I put the vent in and totally changed. So yeah, I was going to talk about that and give you guys a few kind of tips and point out a few things that hopefully will help you out. So the first thing that I reckon you should know about the Fantastic Vent fans is that they are actually fantastic. I've, like I said, got two of them and mine have both been really good. They're made in USA, or at least they were when I bought mine. I don't know if that's changed, but I believe they're still made in USA and pretty high quality. They've been pretty reliable. I've had a look online at reviews of them on Amazon and things like that, and generally they get pretty high reviews. The other fan that everyone seems to like is the Max Air fan. I don't have any experience with it. They look pretty good, and I actually quite like the design of the lids. They sort of have this different design to the Fantastic vents where you can have them open in the rain, and that seems to work pretty well. I don't know that much about the Max Air fans. I don't know where they're made or anything like that. I just at the time went with the Fantastic ones because I'd heard so much good stuff about them, and yeah, I can second that. They're really good fans, so I reckon anyone that was to buy one wouldn't be disappointed. The second thing to know about the Fantastic Vent fan is that there's not just one type. There's actually a lot of different models. So when I first heard about them, I just thought there was the one Fantastic Vent. But there's actually all different models. I got pretty basic ones. Mine have got dials. They don't have buttons. There's nothing automatic about them. They've got a thermostat, which will turn on and off the fan depending on the temperature. They've got 3 speed settings. They can be reversed, and then that's about it really with mine. So, but you can actually buy Fantastic vents, the more expensive ones, with remote controls. They have automatic rain sensors, so if it rains they'll close by themselves. They've got different speed settings. Don't quote me on this, but I think some of them might have like 12 speed settings. So yeah, you can definitely get different models, and there's also different lid types. So I went with the smoked lids on mine. So as you can see, it's closed at the moment, but you can still see light coming through. And I got that because I actually like the idea of having the light coming in, the natural light. It's because I don't have a lot of windows in this van. It sort of helps to make up for that. But you can actually buy white lids, which are just a solid white, and they don't let the light through the same as the smoke lids. And that, I guess, would suit someone who maybe wants to sleep in or something, or, you know, people that I myself am not really affected that much by light in the morning. I'll sleep even if it's still bright inside the room. But a lot of people, if there's just the slightest bit of light, it'll wake them up. So I guess that's something to take into account. So there's different models and different options with the lids and things like that. Personally, the reason I went with the basic ones, not just for price. I mean, price was definitely a part of it because it was sort of, I think it was about $400 for the basic ones here in Australia, and the more expensive ones might have been $700 or $800. But the other reason is just reliability. I just think the simpler something is, the less there is to go wrong. And if it's just a button or a switch or something, or a dial, as opposed to a circuit board with buttons and, you know, all that jazz and remote controls, there's just less to go wrong. So personally, that was my choice. But then there's a lot of people out there that love the automatic rain sensors because they'll leave the vents open when they go out, and they don't have to worry that, you know, what if it rains, because it'll just close by itself. And there are times when I think it would be nice to have a remote to open the vent, say if I'm in bed or something and I want to either turn on or turn off the fan. But it's a, you know, first world problems. It's a small price to pay to have to just sit up and press a button. I also wanted to mention the power consumption of the fans, because I've heard different opinions from different people, but in my opinion the fans are pretty low power consumption, and I never worry. I put them on as much or as little as I need to, and I don't think about power. Now supposedly on the low setting on mine, so number 1, it would use roughly an amp or maybe a little bit less than an amp, and on the high setting it's about 3 amps. So really, even if you're running both fans on high speed, which I never do, it would be 6 amps. Now generally I just have one fan running on number 1. I very rarely need anything more than number 1. The only time I'll turn it up more than number 1 is if it's really hot inside and I'm trying to cool it down quickly, or if I'm burning something in the kitchen and I have to get rid of the fumes, then I'll turn it up to number 3 for a short while until the fumes are gone. But yeah, generally I'll be using an amp because it'll be on number 1, and I'll only use one fan. Generally I use one as a passive vent, so I just open it up. Normally the back one will just be passive, and I'll turn the fan on in the sort of kitchen area. So that's the power consumption. Honestly, I don't think it's a problem, as long as you've got some battery storage and a way of charging your batteries. As far as noise is concerned, I've again heard different opinions from different people. Some people complain that they're too noisy. I personally think they're really quiet for what they are, because in my last van I had a Fiamma turbo vent, and it had a much smaller fan, and it was a smaller opening, but there was only the one speed setting. It was either on or off, and that thing was so loud. It was I mean, like the name suggested, it was a turbo fan. It was just, the thing used to rattle the roof. And putting this on number 1, I can easily sleep with the noise level of one of these on number 1. If you want, I'll turn it on now just so you can hear it. Just open it up. So this is on number 1. I'm sure you can hear that, but to me that's definitely quiet enough to still be able to sleep. I'll put it up to number 2, so you can hear it ramp up a little bit. And then number 3, personally I think number 3 is too loud for sleeping, but number 1 is fine for me. Depends on how fussy you are, I guess. I'm not really that fussy with that kind of white noise. As long as the noise is constant, it's generally alright with me. I just don't like hearing people talking or something like that. And actually this works really well as kind of like a white noise machine. If you turn it on, it just takes away some of that background street noise that you sometimes get when you're sleeping in a van. So it just gives you that nice low hum rather than hearing people walking past and cars and things like that. But yeah, personally, in my opinion, definitely quiet enough. So number 5 on the list of things that I wanted to share kind of applies to all roof vents, so it doesn't really matter which roof vent you get with this tip, but it's to, if you can, get 2 rather than 1. And it's quite common in the van community now for people to do that. Similar setup to mine, having one at the back, one at the front. And there's a few reasons for that. Big reason for me is this van that I'm in doesn't have any windows that open up apart from in the cab area. So if I want to put the roof vent on and I turn the fan on, it's kind of sucking air, but there's nowhere for the air to come through to create a flow. So you open up the back one, let's say you're using the front one for venting the cooking fumes, open the back one, you don't even have to turn the fan on, it can just be passive, and when the fan on the front is sucking the air out, it sucks fresh air in through the other vent, which is really good, and that also works to create kind of like a constant flow of air through the van. So if you're using it to cool the van down, then you can suck the air through, and it won't just kind of cool down the area around the vent, it'll cool down the whole van. It creates a bit of a wind tunnel. And I actually use that when I've got my washing hanging up on my clothesline. You might have seen it in another video. If you haven't, go back and watch some of my previous videos where I go into my clothesline, but it's basically just up here. You can see along the roof there. I hang up all my clothes and then I open up both the vents and create like a wind tunnel, and it dries my clothes pretty quickly actually. So that's a few of the reasons. And then a little tip that I would say when using the vents, particularly the Fantastic vent, I don't know what it's like with others, but if the noise of the fan annoys you when you're sleeping, I've actually found it more effective to, if I'm in the bed, I'll have the back vent open but not on, and I'll have the front vent open and sucking air out. And what that does is it brings the fresh air in through the vent that's above you, and it keeps the noise at the other end of the van. So the noise is a lot lower, but I also find that the air that comes in for some reason seems to spread out more evenly. So yeah, if you've got a 2 vent setup in your van and you're currently, when you're going to sleep, you're turning the one above you on, I actually recommend turning the vent at the front of the van on instead, or at the other end of the van, whatever end you have your bed at. Turn the opposite end on and keep the one above you passive, and that keeps the noise down, and I personally think gives you a better airflow. So that's just a little tip that I've found just through trial and error. Number 6 on the list is something that I unfortunately had to find out the hard way. So I thought I'd share it with you before it happens to you, but it's to be careful if it's windy outside and you've got the vents open, particularly if the wind is blowing in the direction that catches the vent. It acts like a bit of a sail, because what happens is they're not perfectly tight when they're open. They tend to flap a little bit, and if the wind is strong enough, it'll cause them to rattle and flap, and if it catches a gust, can actually crack the lids. And I've had it happen to my front one. I haven't had it happen to the back one, but the front one has cracked and all fractured through, and I talked about this in another video. I did fix it with some epoxy and everything, but I've noticed since then that it's actually broken again in a different place. And I don't know if I accidentally left it open when I was driving or if it was just from the wind itself, but either way, just be careful with that. Don't leave them open when you're driving, and if it's really windy outside, just be careful, you know, just pay attention to if it's flapping around, because they will break. The lids on them are a little bit brittle, and that's probably one of the only things that I would say that would be like a negative. They could potentially make the lids out of a different material, something that's not so prone to cracking. So I've actually just removed the fan and the fly screen real quick, just so I can show you what I'm talking about. But up here you can see we've got the roof vent, and if I come in closer, see all this black stuff here? That's actually silicone, but there's silicone and epoxy there, and that's where I've repaired old cracks from basically when the winds caught it and fractured. But on this side, this is the new problem that I'm faced with now. This is the rail system, and what happens here is when you wind the winder, this sort of arm lifts up and it lifts the lid up. But on either side, so here you've got a screw and on here you've got a screw, you can see behind there's actually these sort of plastic mounts. And when I lift on the left side, you should hopefully be able to see how it's not attached. The plastic mount has actually broken, and it still works. I can still open up the vent and it's fine, but when the wind pushes it, the whole thing is loose now. So I've actually got to, unfortunately, take the lid off again, and I'm hoping that I can get some epoxy in here and fix that mount, because otherwise I'll need to buy a new lid. So yeah, just be careful with wind, and also don't leave them open when you're driving. While I've got the fan pulled apart, it's actually probably a good time to talk about number 7 on the list, which is cleaning. Now, if you're going to use these vents like most people do to vent cooking fumes and stuff, and like me, if you cook a lot, then it's going to build up a lot of grease and oil, and it's going to get pretty dirty pretty quickly. And you're going to have to clean the fan pretty regularly. Like I probably clean mine give it a full clean once every couple of weeks. But it's not that hard to clean. I was going to show you, like I said, while I've got it apart. It's actually, to get it to where it is now with the fan out and everything, is really easy. It's just one screw. If I turn around, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So just up here, you can see this here is the shaft coming off the motor, and there's actually just a little screw hole in the end of that. You probably won't be able to see that. But if I come down here, this is the fan itself, a little bit greasy at the moment, but that's where the shaft goes in there. And on this side, you've got a hole for a single screw. That screw is right here. And basically you just put that in there, push the fan under the shaft, and just use a Phillips head screwdriver, and the fan is back in place. And the fly screen actually just has these clips around the outside, and all you do is you just put it up in place and carefully go one by one and push the clips up, and that's it. But as you can see, hopefully, let's just try and focus here. Mine's already getting a little bit dirty around there. You can't see on the camera, but it's actually just covered in sort of oil and grease. And it gets all up in the lid as well. And what I would normally do is I'll pull the fan out, pull the fly screen off, and I'll just get in there with, you know, like a spray and wipe type thing, and just clean it all out. And that's it. But yeah, if you don't do that, what happens is it gets like a buildup of oil, and that fly screen actually builds up kind of droplets of oil, and all the dust and that sticks to the oil, and it just gets clogged up. So every so often, every 2-3 weeks, I just pull my fly screen off, and sometimes the fan, and I'll give them a clean in the sink, and I'll just give all that a wipe up there, and that's it. But just something to bear in mind. I think a lot of people don't realize that until they start using them, how dirty they get. But yeah, simple maintenance. Alright guys, that's it from me for this video. I'll be back again soon with another video, so stay tuned. Make sure you leave a like, and any comments or questions or anything that you have, put them down below. And if you're not already subscribed, then it'd be awesome if you would subscribe and check the little notification bell so that you actually get told when my videos come out. If you're interested in buying one of these, I'm going to put a couple of links in the description to Amazon, which if you buy them through those links would help me out a little bit. But yeah, other than that, I'll see you guys again next time.